Hops on Instagram Live for about 20 minutes, and it was rambling in nature, didn't stick to the statement, put that down. And, Kyrie Irving, and unfortunately not understanding how to mute and unmute himself at times during the course of his ramblings.
That was the most relatable part of it.
Probably, yes, for me, yes. But not being a big tech guy, I agree with you. Again, and then unmuting, and then muting, and then unmuting, and then muting, and it happened time and time again. But
it was wait, am I muted? Am I back now?
Overall,
very 2021.
Kyrie, and he had an opportunity. Here's the frustrating thing about Irving. He had an opportunity on Media Day to kind of explain himself, didn't want to talk about it, said it was a personal choice. It's not, has nothing to do with this, right? So Kyrie Irving had that opportunity with reporters and decided to take a pass that day. Hops on Instagram Live last night, and if you cut through it, and there was some double talk and talking out of both sides of his mouth. And I know he's a very, very bright guy. It was rambling at times. It's at times hard to kind of pinpoint exactly where he was going with it. But overall, he basically said, it's my choice. I understand. I choose to be unvaccinated. I understand what comes along with it. The NBA season has not begun yet. Someone needs to let Kyrie Irving know that. The preseason has begun, but the NBA regular season has not begun. That was just a point of note for Kyrie, who kept on saying one way or the other that I was promised one thing before the start of the NBA season.
Right.
Well, Kyrie, here's what it comes down to. The Players Association agreed to this. There's no mandate among NBA players. The New York City, de Blasio puts down a mandate that you need to be vaccinated in order to participate. You might have been able to get some sort of, an out to getting vaccinated, but once the mandate comes down in New York City, it is what it is. So either you're going to get vaccinated and play basketball, or you're not going to be vaccinated, you're not going to be able to play basketball here in New York City, and then the Nets make the decision ultimately that they don't want a part-time player. So, I kind of, in a way, Maggie, listening to it, there were certain parts of it where I kind of feel bad for Kyrie. Because I think he had the notion that he was going to be able to play. He didn't want to get vaccinated. It's making his choice. And now he's in a position where he's still deciding not to be vaccinated and he's not going to be able to play basketball.
Yeah, I've kind of realized when it comes to this, Kyrie Irving is definitely talking to a certain portion of society and making a lot of sense to a certain portion of society. And I'm just not one of those people, right? Because when he's saying you got to stop putting emotion and you got to think about this logically, well, I say, science is logic to me, right? So I don't think it is out of emotion. I think that Kyrie might be acting out of emotion, which is his fear of putting this vaccine in his body, as opposed to the science, the logic, the data. At some point, this has to kick in. And so I've just kind of come to the conclusion, Moose, that, I'm probably just not going to get there with Kyrie in terms of his views on this. And that's fine. And we can all just agree to disagree there. What I really took away from this basketball-wise, though, is I do believe Kyrie Irving wants to play basketball. And that's where this comes into, our line of work. And this is where it comes to the Brooklyn Nets, who pulled a long-term, a long-term deal off the table. And I get why. You're not going to be negotiating a long-term deal with Kyrie Irving while you're dealing with all this. And probably, just not the right time. But basketball-wise, I believe that he still wants to play. So if I'm the Brooklyn Nets, I'm not trading him. I'm going to see this through. I'm going to wait this out. You still have Durant and Harden and a good team that's been put here. Sean Mark's doing a good job of filling in a lot of the gaps here with this roster. I'm just going to wait. Maybe the mandate changes. I'm going to hope for a positive outcome here with Kyrie Irving, and I'm not trading him. And I believe that he actually does want to play basketball, because that was a big, big question that, was he going to retire, and does basketball matter to him anymore? I couldn't really get there with a lot of the stuff he said about the vaccine last night, but what he said about his desire to play basketball, I believe that he still has a deep love of the game and still wants to play.
Yeah, I still think he wants to play. I don't know how big of a priority it is for him. I never thought Kyrie would retire. I didn't think this was going to be the end of Kyrie Irving. So I didn't really have that going into and didn't expect it when I found out he was on Instagram Live, that he was going to call it a career, or it's just a matter of where the priority is of playing basketball. He does have an unbelievable God-given talent. He talked about that, been playing it since he was in the fourth grade, all of these things, and putting him into a position to make the amount of money that he's made on the court and off the court as well, with his sneaker contracts and other deals. And God bless, that's great. That's fantastic. And I never got a sense of that he'd never play in the NBA again. The question was, well, would he suit up for the Brooklyn Nets? And I think I don't know if the mandate's going to change to get him back on the court, or at some point in time, if the urge to get back on the court will maybe have Kyrie Irving get the vaccine. I'm not sure. I don't think so. I don't think his last day as a Brooklyn Net. I don't think we've seen the last day of Kyrie Irving as a Brooklyn Net. No. I don't think that has happened.
And I don't
think it's. That's fair. I mean, listen, that's really up to Sean Marks and the Brooklyn Nets, and if another team is willing to take on Kyrie Irving at this stage.
Listen, Joseph Tsai, the owner of the Nets, has shown that he's perfectly willing to pay players even if they're not playing. Right? They've signed Kevin Durant, who's coming off of an Achilles injury. I mean, even for as talented as Durant was, that's taking a really big leap there. That he's going to come back and be the same guy at his age, that kind of an injury, and they took that leap of faith. He didn't play for the first year plus, and it's turned out really well for them. I think they're willing to take those kind of gambles. Like if Kyrie Irving does not play this entire season, if this mandate stays in place, and that is obviously all about numbers and cases and stuff like that, it's a numbers game here, then I think he still comes back next year and they look at it like, we're going to put the long-term, value of Kyrie Irving ahead of the short-term loss of him this season.
Yeah, I think it depends. I mean, I don't know if I think it really depends on how this season does play out. I think the Brooklyn Nets are in the leverage position where they've got Harden and Durant, and if those two stay healthy, they're the betting favorite to win an NBA title.
Yeah, I think the odds didn't change when when the message came down about Kyrie not playing.
I think the messaging would change if James Harden was not a Brooklyn Net. I think they would have bent over backwards for Kyrie Irving to be a part-time player on this team.
Maybe.
I'm pretty confident in believing that and thinking that. Like I think that has everything to do with the fact that Brooklyn's got Harden, they've got Durant, they've got two of the top 5 players in the entire sport. Having Kyrie Irving being a part of it would make it a lot easier to win an NBA title, but they can still win an NBA championship without him. Mm-hmm. And they're really, really confident as an organization in their roster, even without Kyrie Irving, that they are good enough to win an NBA championship. So, yeah, I think it really depends on how this year does play out. I mean, I don't know if I'd say it's out of the realm of possibility of Kyrie Irving at some point in time getting the vaccine. I disagree with you there.
Really? After listening to that last night?
Yeah, I would. I mean, because I think Kyrie Irving basically told you that he was expecting one thing, something else happened, and he's taking his time to now think about it and making the choice to be unvaccinated. That doesn't necessarily mean later on down the line he can't choose differently, and it's his choice. If he chooses to get vaccinated or decides and understands the money that he's getting lost, and he said he likes money, but money's not everything in life, understands about giving up the possibility of winning an NBA title, has really thought this out, as Kyrie Irving can only do, about the ramifications of making the decision of not getting vaccinated.
Yeah, I came away with that with a total opposite view in terms of him and getting the vaccine. Listen, hopefully I'm wrong and he does change his mind, but I don't think that he's headed in that direction at all, right? After listening to that, I think that, we've had a lot of time here, since the vaccine has been available. And I get, it's unfortunate for him that the rug was kind of pulled out from under him, as he sort of speculated, like he thought he was going to be able to just follow the rules and that would be fine. And listen, because the cases went up in New York City, this was not anything personal against Kyrie Irving. The cases went up. And so they put the mandate in like other cities in this country have, and like what they've done in Europe in some cases, in some cities there too, and trying to get ahead of this thing so that we don't get a third wave. Like, you can understand why this mandate is here. And it came down in mid-August. And then took effect really in September. And so, yeah, it was a little bit of a left turn from what he thought, but you've had a lot of time now, I guess, to think about your stance on being vaccinated. And I think his stance hasn't changed. So that's why I don't see that coming. I'm not holding out for that. If I'm a Net fan, I'm not holding out for that. But, I just believe that there are a lot of people who seem to have the idea like Kyrie Irving doesn't matter to the Nets' chances of winning a title. And you know what? You might not be wrong about that, considering, Moose, as you said, the talent that is still here on this Brooklyn Nets team. But if I'm the Nets, there's no way that I would be trading him, considering I have already inroads with him. It seems like their relationship is still pretty good. I'm still thinking I'm at some point going to get him under a long-term deal. and I'm going to eventually see the fruits of this big three together. And oh, by the way, I'm also kind of guarding against in the future any kind of injuries, wear and tear, breakdown of having guys who are in their mid-30s who I have, dedicated a lot of money to. I think the Nets honestly would be foolish to trade him at this point. Even if you might not need him this year, don't like throw the baby out the bathwater here. Like at some point, Kyrie Irving, he's a 50, 40, 90 guy. I mean, these are rare specimens here in the NBA.
He also creates unnecessary drama when it doesn't need to be. He shows you little to no leadership skills as a basketball player.
But do you think that was the reason that they lost to the Milwaukee Bucks? Like his injury was the reason they lost to the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, they were hurt. He and Harden.
Right. So ultimately, though, what is Kyrie Irving being a distraction at times? And I get it, and it's frustrating. But do you think that ultimately determines whether or not they're going to win a title? Because I think the injuries determine whether or not they're going to win a title.
Right, but
year.
it's a matter of if it's worth going through during a regular season. I mean, I wouldn't say it's out of the realm of possibility or say that the Brooklyn Nets could never trade Kyrie Irving. I think it would be dependent on what exactly would be on the table. And he's not signed to a long-term deal. And the report came out yesterday that the Nets have pulled the long-term offer off of the table and that he's got a player option for next year. Say if the Nets win a championship this year without Kyrie Irving being a part of it, they have to have him be a part of it long term. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that.
Well, I think it would probably be in their best interest, again.
If I've won already and my team is good enough and I don't have to deal with the headache and the nonsense and the drama that comes along with Kyrie Irving, last year disappearing, showing up at his sister's birthday party and everything like that. All the stuff
I know, but
that
no bearing on their playoffs.
But it's still the nonsense you don't need to deal with.
No, but they
obviously
got past it. That's my point. They obviously got past it to the point of Kevin Durant's big toe on the line in a Game 7. They got past that and made a playoff run that should have been longer.
I guess when does it become a point where you don't want to? You can get past a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. They'll get past this.
When do you come a point where you no longer want to be a part of it?
Well, I mean, maybe this is that line in the sand, and I can understand why the organization.
I mean, Joseph Tsai a couple weeks ago said our goal right now is to win an NBA championship. The Nets did an about face in a 24-hour span, going from Steve Nash saying we're preparing for Kyrie Irving to be a part-time player to basically the very next day, Sean Marks coming out and saying that Kyrie Irving is not going to be a part of this team as a part-time player practicing or playing. Mm-hmm. So everything has changed with that organization. That has probably a lot to do with the confidence of the talent they have on the roster. And they said they don't want to be a part of it anymore. No one's debating. Kyrie's a really, really talented player. And yes, you can, when you get to the NBA playoffs, absolutely he could be a difference maker. But they can win without him.
Right. Well, he's proven he's a difference maker in the playoffs. And so those guys are really hard to come by. I mean, how many are there really in the league? Not great players, not all-stars, guys who are difference makers in the postseason. Kyrie Irving is one of those players and still is one of those players. And the other thing, too, is like okay, Kyrie Irving, if you are going to trade him, I'd hope you get some draft picks would be the big thing to get back from, not just Ben Simmons or something where you're trading a disgruntled star for a disgruntled star, because that's the thing that the Nets do not have. Right? The Harden trade kind of decimated them of any of their biggest resources. So if you aren't re-signing your own guys who are superstars, where are you finding that big-time help? You could say, well, maybe you don't need it. I would say, I'm not so sure about that considering the injury histories of Durant and Harden.
Yeah, listen, I don't think Kyrie's getting traded. I don't think he's getting moved right now. I don't. I think the Nets are going to play ball with him for a while, and I don't think Kyrie or his family want him to leave the New York area. He just right now is choosing to not be vaccinated. Right. And we got a little bit of clarification from Kyrie last night, and give him credit for hopping on Instagram Live and speaking to everyone out there. I had over 100,000 people watching. Yeah. Brooklyn bound we go. Stefan, what's going on, Stefan?
Hey, Moose, Maggie. Always great show. Good talking to you.
You too, Stefan. What's happening?
So just wanted to talk Kyrie and then Met GM search for a second. So with Kyrie, I agree with everything that you all saying. I really applaud the GM for taking that stance. If you're building a championship team, it got to be all in. So that part-time thing was nonsense. And I just got to say, too, that, I really hope there's no deep, really kind of, mental health issues with Kyrie when it comes to this stuff, because there's always that possibility. And at the end of the day, this can't grow to be a distraction. And I agree with you. They almost won it without him, so it stands to reason that they could possibly make a run without him. So, it's kind of shape up, and get in line and win that championship. And, he's supposed to be a big Nets guy, right? He followed them, Jersey. So it's like, be on your best behavior, man. Bring that championship, and
he doesn't
Stephon,
like mandates.
I think he's doing this a clear heart, full mind, can't lose. What's that line from Friday Night Lights? Whatever. Like, I think
I don't know.
He isn't clear minds, full hearts, can't lose.
You're probably right. I'm not sure. I didn't watch that movie. I didn't watch that show.
Didn't watch that show?
No.
Good show. So, no, I think that he, in terms of like mental health, obviously you only want someone to be in a good mental health spot. And he did acknowledge, like, listen, there's stress over this pandemic move. So I agree with him there. I don't think we've begun to unpack the sort of mental stress that this pandemic has put on all of us and continues to put on all of us, right? It's not gone. It hasn't gone away. It's super stressful on so many levels. So with that, I'm right there with him when he acknowledges that. I don't think this is a mental health thing. I think he 100%, this is how he feels, which is he thinks that he's making a logical choice for himself. That's where he and I are going to split. I think that the logic means science, so that's where I would split with him. The other part with Kyrie, and this is just kind of more, this is not serious or anything, but it's just a little bit more like, when he's talking about how he understands that as a basketball player, he is inspirational and he has the ability to reach people and touch people and be a part of their lives. And he understands that he's an influence in a lot of people's lives, but at the same time doesn't understand why he's getting all this attention about not being vaccinated. It's like, wait, you just said it though.
Yeah.
You have a following. There's 100,000 people watching his Instagram at 11 o'clock at night.
At times it was tough to take, right?
Like,
it is. And, there's different levels of stress when, what would we go over? Kyrie's made how much in his career?
160.
Yeah, $160 million. I mean, a lot of the stress that people are going through with the pandemic, losing work, everything that goes along, when you have that kind of money in your bank account and you've made that kind of money over the course of his career, and God bless him, no one's holding anything against him. The point is that a lot of the stress that people are feeling dealing with the pandemic, loss of work and loss of funds, not being able to put food on the table, not being able to pay their rent, not being able to pay their mortgage, not being able to pay bills, all of those things. Well, those stressors don't come along with Kyrie Irving. So listen, he can do, and like I've said it before, you have a right to make a choice. You want to decide, and Kyrie Irving was going under the premonition that it was going to be one way, and then all of a sudden it changed, and he's not been able to adapt to that. And he's thinking through the process right now, and he chooses to be unvaccinated. I thought he was of clear mind last night with his explanation, even though it was rambling in nature at times, of telling you why he decided to do what he did. 877-337-6666. Moose and Maggie with you. We'll come back with your Kyrie calls. Brian Geltzeiler will join us a little bit later on this hour. Paul Heyman from the WWE will join us in the 11 o'clock hour. And also Ian Rappaport from the NFL Network. Plenty of your calls. We'll get into the Aaron Boone wait. We're into day 9 now.
How about the sighting?
Day 9, yes, there was a sighting. It's like the Loch Ness Monster. It really is. There was an Aaron Boone sighting outside of Yankee Stadium yesterday.
A little more frequent that we see Boone.
Yes, but that's what it's come down to right now.
He emerged out of the water,
right,
of like Loch Ness.
Where there were moving boxes.
He was in a sweatshirt. I'm like, oh, casual meeting.
Yeah, there you go. He likes the hoodie.
It's a good look for him.
Yeah, that's it. He could pull it off. He's athletic. 10:20. Moose and Maggie with you, the Fan in New York.